Hi everybody, thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I am Kel. I'm the gallery and studio manager. I do all the exhibition and education programming here at River Arts. So thank you so much for coming. We are celebrating 3 artists today. Nana Schowalter, who is in the audience and will be speaking shortly. Derek Hibbs, who's also in the audience and will be speaking shortly. And Chuck Bauer, who couldn't be with us this evening. And I have a statement to read in his stead, and he's sorry he couldn't come. Chuck says, "Thank you for taking an interest in my printmaking. I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you. Making fine art prints is new to me, and all the work here, which is about 18 pieces, was made within the past 2 to 3 years. Traditional techniques suggest traditional subject matter, of course, and that's how most people start, including me. Eventually, as my confidence grew, it was easy to try new approaches, and so I did that too. Today, prints themselves are a kind of poor relation, quote unquote, or, put another way, a minor key medium. They are largely out of favor in our fast-paced and wound-up world. That is because they are on paper, almost always in a modest scale, usually a humble voice, often lack bright colors, trumpeting innovations, and harsh slash and dash techniques. They are, simply put, easily overlooked. That said, for me, they have a kind of puppy dog in the window appeal because they can be technically challenging and often require considerable time and devotion. Add to those features, I have noted over the years that many mature artists seek out printmaking in their later years. I have been a painter all of my life, but once arriving in my mid-70s, I began to wonder what was missing by never having made fine art prints. So I decided to find out. One of my first discoveries was that almost anything that has passed through a press has suddenly been stamped with a kind of unifying and legitimizing imprimatur, if you'll forgive the pun. Surprise creeps in, but it's always held in check and framed by unification, definition, and pressure. The language is subtle, but unmistakable. So-called plate marks and plate tone are only 2 examples. Another might be the markings and various attributions and other information appearing on the face of the print, traditionally in pencil, together with a signature, date, edition number, and etc. All these small things add up and make prints special, or at least it does for me. Ideally, successful work should speak for itself. But it cannot hurt to say, I am seeking an expression anchored in nostalgia, but sometimes drifting into experiment. In printmaking, the kids play quietly, and they are often alone. So join me, be part of the advance guard, help lead the charge to bring back attention to fine art prints. Slow down, chill out, and listen to what they may have to say. Often, it's in a whisper. Thank you for being interested.
For joining us tonight. First, I'd like to thank Kel and the whole staff for making this space look as fabulous as it does. It's been a real privilege to be represented by River Arts Gallery. So, I'd like to give you a little information tonight. I often get asked questions about process and background, so I'll fill in what I can and be happy to answer any questions. I started doing artwork as a painter, and I was describing to Sam earlier, when I took a class in 3D design, I had this epiphany that I was making an object that was in space. Here was this thing. I wasn't painting an illusion of something. And that really rang true to me. So I've been making objects pretty much since then. And in terms of skill sets, building along the way through time, starting out with sewing and beadwork and making sculpture with those skills, and then learning carpentry and adding woodworking to build bigger objects, and then with metalworking learning through the art department in Madison. I learned stick welding, which was basically if you can get it to stick, you're good. But it wasn't quite enough, so I added to that taking a machine shop and welding class through the engineering department, and that helped tremendously. However, as we all know, anyone who works with their hands, making things over time, you develop a level of expertise and familiarity that you really can't learn in just a class. So I attribute decades worth of practice to my welding skills. So about the same time I was learning how to weld better, I met someone who taught me blacksmithing. And that was 40 years ago. And that person is in the audience tonight, my husband, Bob Bergman. And he ran an architectural ironworking business, and I had my separate art making business. The skills were similar in the welding and fabricating, but the product and the target market were very different. So we had separate businesses, but helped each other as needed, mostly separate. And it worked out great. Must have, because we're still here. So in the techniques that I use in making my pieces include the blacksmithing, the hot forging blacksmithing technique, along with fabricating, which is basically welding pieces together. And the hot work is mesmerizing. It's so much fun. I never tire of it. It's hot, dirty, noisy work, and it's just so exciting. So places where you can see the forged work are here and here. The steel comes in 20-foot lengths. Whatever you're looking at, whatever diameter, squares, tubing, 20-foot lengths. And imagine manipulating that into something more fluid. And it's mostly done hot. So I have a gas forge and I use a torch. And some of it, if it's small enough, it can be done cold. So there's a tool that has two prongs. The metal goes in. You pull and you get a bend. You turn it around, you pull, you get a bend, and that gives you the wiggle. So this can be done cold. But this is hot because it's a quick and sharp bend. So the hands are done from a 42-inch piece of metal, forged to a little taper, heated and wrapped around a scroll form, and from that length, then it's marked off and the fingers are bent with a torch to come up with the end. So a lot of these pieces, I would say, include elements that I consider to be my own personal lexicon or my own alphabet. There isn't anything specific they're spelling except for the design that you see. And your reaction to that design then gets to be your own. So there are things I'm drawn to, the water symbol, that you find in Egyptian, every culture has that water symbol. Egyptian hieroglyphics have it. The little wiggle here, the spiral is a nature form. You see it everywhere. You see it when the water goes down the drain. You see it in shells. You see it in tornadoes, in ferns that are unfolding. So I draw those images in. Often I'll make things in multiples, and I'll fill bins full of those things. So I have bins full of this little wiggle. I have bins full of this scroll. And when I have all those letters, so to speak, and I come up with a design on my design table, I realize, well, if I put a scroll here, or if I did this over here, it helps me fill in the entire design of whatever new piece I'm making. So the houses, in terms of designs, the houses started way back 30 years ago when I read an article about spirit houses of Thailand. And it was not illustrated, so I had to guess what that might be. And I started making garden spirit houses of my own. And every year I try to come up with another design or two. What else is a recurring theme? The goddesses. I've been making for decades, and I usually have a different goddess every couple of years or a series of them. And most women I know are gardeners, and so the garden goddess is always a really popular image to make. So this year, the new design was to play with kinetics. And I wanted to somehow incorporate motion. I was overly ambitious and I just wanted this thing to do the jig. But in fact, these pieces are more like Tai Chi. They turn like this in the wind. Nice and slow, just accept it. It's a beautiful motion. But this one and the blue one spin this way. So it's very gentle. Even in the highest wind, it'll go true like a weather vane and just stay there in the highest wind. But they will spin if you want to play with them. Anybody have any questions? Yeah?
Is the color then like powder coat?
No, it looks like it though, doesn't it? The pieces are dark gray and they have welding marks on them and they're greasy and when they're done. And so I use an industrial sandblaster with the big air hood and break it down to clean metal, and then they're primed and they're painted. So there's an advantage to having a painted surface in terms of product to sell to people, in that if it gets dinged, $5 in 5 minutes, you can fix that. So that has been, I found that has been a really helpful sales tool. Powder coating is great and you can touch it up with a little bit of paint. It's never going to be the same. But I am going to shift a little bit more to a hybrid of half painted and half powder coated over time.
What's your most popular color?
Well, personally or public? Personally, red. I drifted to the primaries with metallic, and that seems to cover all the bases. So red, blue, green, any variation on a theme, and the metallic. And I would say the yellows go because they're highly visible. So if someone has a darker garden space, it shows up really well. So, yes?
I just wanted to say that more of Nana's work is on the deck.
Oh, thanks.
Out in the garden. Right
On the side. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions? If anyone is interested in learning about blacksmithing, I do teach. So contact information should be available here.
Where are you?
I'm an hour south of here. And
Where's that?
I teach, we're an hour, well, 10 miles west of New Glarus. Does that help? And I teach basic blacksmithing for beginners. And we use the oxy-propane torch for the heat source because it heats up exactly what you need to hammer. And it's a lot of fun. I have a wide range of ages and groups of people and families come. So it's a class of 4. So if you're interested, find 4 people and give me a call. Anyone else? Yes?
You have a website, Nana?
Yes, nanaschowalter.com.
And does that have blacksmithing?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It does. So I use my website more as a gallery space type portfolio as opposed to a sales pitch. And it helps in that when I do commission work, people can look at the work I have done and they can pick out their own elements that they want repeated or added to a piece. So I've done gate commissions and sculpture commissions. And yes?
Do you have your own powder painting booth, powder coating booth?
Well, I have one across the street and I get to rent it.
Okay.
So that's how that works. Anyone else? No? Well, thank you for your time.
Hello, everybody. My name's Derek. Thank you for coming out this evening, and thanks to Kel and everybody here at River Arts. It's been fantastic to teach some classes here. I've taught some drawing and woodblock printmaking classes. There'll be more of those coming up in fall and winter, so look for that. So I guess I'll just start by telling you a little bit about myself. If you read my short statement in there, I've always been an artist. I actually got into art in ceramics. So back in like middle school, and then started school as a ceramics BFA student. And then I kind of stumbled into printmaking by accident. I was searching for, I was trained as like a potter and was searching for a way to kind of invite like more narrative into my work. And imagery, and rather than making, really elaborate sculptures out of clay, I stumbled into printmaking and kind of took off with it from there. and I think I'm also interested in the similarities of those processes. They're very technically involved processes, ceramics and printmaking, so I think that was a draw for me as well. And I was always a drawer growing up, so it kind of just, the combination of process and the ability to make the imagery I want really drew me to printmaking. So I moved to Wisconsin in 2017 to go to grad school at UW-Madison, and have been here ever since. I graduated in 2020. We've stayed and have really enjoyed our time here, and really don't plan to leave as far as I know for now. But I guess I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of the work that's on display here. So through the graduate program, there's a push to have content in your work, whatever it's based on. It's obviously totally up to you, but I'm a history lover, and I was always really interested in the history of printmaking and its kind of involvement with social and political commentary. I was really initially drawn to artists like Goya, Daumier, and then there's a ton of contemporary printmakers who also do a ton of social and politically engaged work. And I mean, for a long time, until the invention of like radio and television, like print was the primary form of social media and communication. So I really enjoyed that parallel. Also, both of my parents growing up worked in a ticket factory, so like there was something about the smell of ink and just like the kind of like standing on a concrete floor all day and just like being around presses that like I was really drawn to. Like it was kind of nostalgic when I got into a printmaking lab or printmaking studio. I didn't, that was just kind of an accident because my parents printed tickets. So anyway, in grad school, we totally kind of dove into this full like engagement with personal, mental health, substance abuse. Let's see, there's an example of a print in there that's kind of reminiscent of my old work. I think it was made in 2021 or so. And it's kind of this contemplative like self-portrait post-grad school. It was in the pandemic, 2020, we were like locked down for months. And I was like, what the heck am I gonna do? So I, with the help of some friends that are here, bought a press and set up a home studio in my garage, essentially. Spent thousands and thousands of dollars and got some equipment and found some stuff and a lot of heavy lifting, but eventually got to a point where I was able to continue making work in my garage. And I was also really like, through the pandemic, I would listen to NPR like all day while I worked. When they had the classical music sometimes, but mostly the news and stuff. And I was like really in tune with it and a little like obsessed with it in school. And then through the pandemic and like being locked down and just thinking like, what am I going to do with my life after this? I don't know. I guess for my mental health, kind of just started making some prints about animals, things that I love, pets and birds. So just to continue that satisfaction of making and continuing, keeping my skills up or whatever you want to say. And I think, there's like a history in that too. We looked at a lot of Audubon in grad school, the bird prints, and that's definitely a totally valid way of working. So these are things for me still. Art has always been like a mental health kind of meditative process thing. I think that's why I'm drawn to the processes of ceramics and printmaking, because it gives me sort of a release and something I can just focus on. And actually the most recent prints in these smaller scales kind of came out of the workshop I did here in the fall. I cut all these 6x8 wood blocks to teach and share with the students, and we all worked at that size. And then I had a bunch of them left over, so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna use these, and they're portable. I'll take them to work and like carve on my lunch break. And you know, it made it so I could do work quicker, but also like a little more portable, or you know, in different places. And in grad school, I did prints that were like 30 by 44 and bigger stuff. I did like a 5 by 4 foot woodcut. Incredibly time consuming. You know, it'd take me months at a time to carve these things, or you know, a whole month to work through a really densely layered print. And there's something about the simplicity of just the small scale and the more immediate. That's what I always enjoyed about ceramics, is the immediacy and the instant gratification of just having something that you did in like a couple hours or a day, or you know, a couple of days or whatever. So I plan to continue kind of working in this format, and yeah, I'm currently just working out of my home studio still. I work full-time at the Chazen Museum of Art as a preparator and art handler. So that I taught for 2 years after grad school as well at UW-Platteville, but I live in Madison, so I drove basically an hour and a half each way. It got to be very cost ineffective. I was spending basically, you know, $300 a month on gas, and not making that much as an adjunct faculty as well. So I took the full-time position at the Chazen, and now I teach part-time 2D design at Madison College as well. And then make prints in my free time, and I've done some contract printing and worked with other artists in my home studio to help both printmakers that I know make art, and also painters that want to kind of dabble in printmaking, or make a print of, you know, similar to one of their paintings to sell. So I've done that kind of work for them as well. Yeah, so if you haven't been in the bathroom yet, get some fluids in you and give yourself a reason to go in there, or just go take a peek when nobody else is in there.
Is that your gallery?
Yeah, the powder room gallery is where my work is. But there's also loose prints for sale up here. So I haven't given an artist talk in probably 2 years or so it was kind of all over the place. But is there any questions? Yeah.
So is there ever a period where, like, when you were working with ceramics, that you thought maybe like stamping or, you know, imprinting on that was instant, you know, that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've always been interested in like printmaking on clay, and I mean, when I left UW-Platteville, there was like a student that was kind of getting into it, and I was like, oh, I left, so like obviously didn't get to do it there, but I'm still interested in that. I'm interested in, like, I think now just kind of like, we have some ceramics equipment, and my partner's a high school art teacher, so we have access to kilns and whatnot. So I've been thinking about trying to make some forms again and just do like some sgraffito or other just simpler designs that correlate more with my printmaking work and my drawing on some ceramic vessels, because I also really enjoyed the functionality of ceramics. But yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's been years since I've done ceramics. I made a few things while I taught at Platteville, but I would love to get back into that and continue to make work in that way too. So, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Derek and I went to grad school together.
Yes.
Did the same, and
Our studios are next to each other. Our studios are right next to each other.
And I'm just wondering, as someone who also made really personal work in grad school,
Yeah.
I'm wondering like how you feel, if you could talk a little bit more about like the shift between like that, I mean those and not that your current work isn't awesome, but like, I mean, these really awesome like personal prints you're making.
Yeah.
And the shift towards these things that, you know, feel like give you some kind of relief, or it's a shift, right? Like,
It is for sure. That's a great question. I think maybe what I wanted to explain more in the artist talk itself, so thank you. Yeah, I think it was, I just needed to keep making stuff. So I started making animal prints, and like I said, it was really personal, a lot about my experiences growing up and living in a household that had a lot of like substance abuse and other kinds of issues going on. And also kind of reflecting on I worked as like a truck driver for 7 years, and so it was kind of my experience as a, I guess I would say like a blue collar kind of like worker, and then kind of leaving that world to go to like the art world. So yeah, I guess the shift for me was like I wanted to stop making stuff that was kind of sad. I mean, it felt important to get it out, but it was ultimately like kind of sad. And I think like animals, like I said, my pets make me happy. Birds, I love watching birds. We camp and are outside all the time, so I love identifying birds and seeing them. But I don't think like I'm abandoning that completely. I think I can get back to like I made really like dense, like this wood cut that's here, and you can see in the restroom and the powder room is I think like 8 or 9 layers. So it's carving, it's reductive carving, and carving away more and printing a color on top of that, carving away more and printing a color on top of that. So it's really dense, and there's an element about printmaking in that regard that I've always enjoyed. Like I'm not gonna stop doing that. This is just kind of that instant gratification for me, and it satisfies my itch to make stuff still. So I think I can make bigger or more dense, detailed prints that are a little happier eventually. Yeah, I was like, so like when the pandemic hit, like I was working on a 7 Deadly Sins series. There's been like many artists that have done that. So like I recently thought, and actually at the museum I just saw a painting of the 7 Deadly Sins and the 7 Virtues the other day, and I was like, what if I did the Virtues instead? Because those are kind of happy, or you know. So yeah. So yeah, does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's something I think about too.
Yeah, and I mean we all want to make stuff, right? I mean we have that urge naturally. So just got to keep doing it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. So what does your? I'm a musician, so
okay.
I'm always interested to hear what visual artists do for practice. Like, would you have like a like?
For practice, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I practice my scales.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Stuff. Like,
So.
What do you do for your practice?
I mean, so I play guitar as well, so I know what you mean from that, and it's not quite the same for me because if I'm not great at guitar, but like I haven't played guitar in like a long time, and I know if I picked it up now, I wouldn't be at the same level I was at 3 years ago when I was playing like avidly. So I mean, I draw probably not as much as I should. I tend to do more in the summers. It's just like sitting outside, just like drawing from life, drawing nature, drawing plants, animals, things like that. And I really enjoy drawing people too. That a lot of my works were figurative before I started doing animals. So yeah, I mean, I think just like thinking about it helps. Honestly, like, I mean, obviously work makes work. I think that's something artists always say. It's something I remember like hearing in school. So like once you start making stuff again and like get in a certain rhythm, I think things grow from there. But I mean, going back to your point, like from a musician standpoint, I think you do need to like slightly retrain yourself in your hand and some of the more meticulous things in drawing and printmaking, especially when you're doing like detail-oriented stuff. And yeah, I mean, especially with carving too. Like it's a kind of a physical thing. I mean, I'm not that old, but like I do notice it getting more difficult. Like, and I wear a wrist brace now and everything, and trying to take care. And like my posture when I make anything is always garbage. I'm just like hunched over like for 4 to 6 hours at a time. So like, just trying to be conscious of your body too, I think is important. Anybody else? Cool. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity.